There's a reason you feel like something's missing, a reason your wins feel hollow, a reason the life you imagine for yourself, the real one, not the version you sell to others, still feels out of reach. It's not because you're lazy, not because you're unworthy, not because you're broken. It's because you've buried the part of you that holds the key, the part of you that's raw, unedited, unfiltered, too loud for polite rooms, too wild for the plans others had for you, too true to survive in a world addicted to masks. You buried it because somewhere along the way, someone taught you that to be loved, you had to be small, to be accepted. You had to be safe, to be successful. You had to be shiny. So you learned to clean yourself up. Not just your appearance, your soul. You smiled when you were in pain. You stayed quiet when you wanted to scream. You nodded when something inside you begged to walk away. And over time, you started calling this survival discipline. You called it strength. You even called it ambition. But it was self-abandonment dressed in achievement. And now here you are, with a life that looks good from the outside, but doesn't feel like yours, because the life you want, the one that gives you chills when you imagine it, isn't out there in some future moment. It's buried inside the part of you you've been taught to hide. That's what Carl Jung meant when he said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." He wasn't being poetic. He was giving you a map, because buried in your shadow, in the anger you suppressed the dreams. You gave up on the shame you can't speak aloud, the creativity you called impractical, the heartbreak you never processed is the truth. Not the truth they gave you, the truth you were born with. And here's the hard part. It won't reveal itself until you're ready to look at what you've hidden. Until you stop running from the feeling that says, "This isn't me." Until you stop pretending you're okay. Staying halfway alive. The life you want isn't built through perfection. It's built through integration. That means facing what's inside, not to fix it, but to listen to it. Because what if the parts of you you've been avoiding are actually your teachers? What if the rage is a boundary you were never allowed to set? What if the grief is a love that never had space to be felt? What if the jealousy is a dream that still wants to live? You weren't meant to numb this. You were meant to learn from it. But first, you have to stop hiding, stop editing, stop performing, stop bending your identity to fit a mold that was never made for you. You cannot heal in the same patterns that broke you. You cannot become whole while staying divided, so go back. Not to the pain, to the pieces of you that still remember who you really are, the parts that got left behind when survival became the priority. Because genius doesn't live in the version of you that's always smiling. It lives in the version that's honest. Honest enough to say, "I'm tired of being everything except myself." This is where the path begins, not in chasing more, but in reclaiming you. You cannot find peace in a life built on performance. You can win awards, you can gain followers, you can check every box and still feel empty because the soul doesn't care about what the world applauds. The soul only asks one thing: are you being true? And the truth, your truth, has never been clean. It's never been convenient. It doesn't care if it fits the job description, the relationship, or the culture you were raised in. It doesn't care if it gets you likes. It wants to make you alive. But aliveness requires honesty, and honesty starts with confronting the parts of you you pretend don't exist. The anger that rises when you're talked over, the ache in your chest when you betray your boundaries, the jealousy that flares when you see someone else living your unlived dream. You've been taught to dismiss these things as weakness. But what if they were sacred messages? What if that anger is asking you to finally speak? What if that ache is a signal that your life has drifted from your purpose? What if that jealousy isn't something to be ashamed of, but a compass, pointing to where you've abandoned yourself? You don't get your power back by avoiding your darkness. You get it back by listening to it. Because your shadow, the part of you you hide, isn't the enemy. It's the gatekeeper. It guards your genius. It protects your rawest gifts. It holds the very pieces of yourself that were too bold, too bright, too true, for a world that only knows how to digest conformity. And if you never turn inward, if you never stop long enough to hear what it's been trying to say, you'll spend your whole life outsourcing your identity to other people, to the roles you play, to the approval you chase, to the version of yourself that gets invited to the table, even if it means leaving your soul at the door. But you are not here to be edited. You are not here to be watered down. You are here to become whole. And wholeness is not comfort, it is confrontation. You must face the mirror and ask, what am I pretending not to know? What part of me have I made the villain, just so I could feel loved, whose voice still echoes in my head when I try to be bold, because until you name it, it will own you. Until you see it, it will shape your decisions in silence. Until you turn toward it, with compassion instead of fear, it will keep stealing the wheel, driving your life into detours and dead ends you don't understand. This is why most people never become who they are, because it costs comfort, it costs false belonging, it costs the illusion of being good in a world that rewards quiet suffering. But if you want to really live, you must stop seeking to be liked and start becoming known, known by yourself, known in your wholeness, known in the spaces where your voice shakes, your eyes burn, and your soul finally exhales and says, This is me. That is the moment your life starts to shift, because when you reclaim your shadow, you reclaim your capacity. The capacity to say no and not flinch, the capacity to feel your fear and still move forward, the capacity to be misunderstood and stay grounded in truth, the capacity to walk away from anything that costs your peace, your values, your depth. This is not softness. This is not indulgence. This is power. The quiet, steady kind that doesn't need to shout, the kind that doesn't come from the light, but from the integration of all you are. And when you finally stand in that, you no longer beg for belonging. You become the place where belonging begins.